You're listening to Kayak Flyer with your host, Sean. This week we're brought to you by Tennessee Trailers, OutdoorAdventureTrailers.com, the best way to get your kayak to and from the water. Cutthroat Furled Leaders, the only leaders that I use. Cutthroat Furled Leaders are guaranteed to perform for whatever species of fish you're chasing. Check them out at cutthroatfurledleaders.com. Save 15% promo kayak. Stoneflynets.com, the very best in handcrafted and custom fishing nets made in the great state of Arkansas. Check out Stonefly Nets at stoneflynets.com.
Hey gang, I'm here and I'm going to tell you what, every week I pride myself on bringing you great guests. I mean, if we look back just over the last few weeks, we had a master class FFI casting instructor, Don, talking about flies. He's going to come back on talking about bass flies. Then we had Don from Brainbugscom on here. And guys, my fly is live. I didn't mention it when we had him on there, but my fly is live. You can buy right now from him. And then we had the Fly Armory. We had Jared and Jess. But the problem with running your own podcast and doing all the work is sometimes you get some guests that are rather lacking. And that's what we have tonight. We got Mike tonight. And I met Mike down at the Sow Bug, and I'm going to tell you what, I think we're both honorary Texans, those guys we was hanging out with. But you are such a fun guy to be around, dude. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. Was that people lacking, was that a pun intended?
Yes, that was.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I really had a great time at the Sow Bug down there meeting you guys, and Patty Lucan was such a wonderful host. We didn't expect to go and see her and visit, but she invited Michael Ames, my good friend, and Dave Weingold, my other good friend. I only have two friends. Well, if I count you now, I got maybe three. But anyway, we were there, and because we were tagging along, she invited all of us to come and go. And I had never met her before, but we went to her house, had a great time, a great meal, got to talk with a bunch of guys. Of course, I knew almost all of them already anyway from the shows, one thing and another, and got to meet you, which was an experience, I'll have to admit.
That is, and meeting you was an experience as well, because I've never met anybody that can talk shit back to me as well as you can, and we had so much fun, and we laughed so much, and it was amazing.
Yeah, well, the alcohol probably helped that a little bit.
Well, I honestly thought you were a Texan until you gave me your card.
No, a Texan.
Yeah, I thought you were with the Texas boys until you gave me a card.
No, I was born in Texas, and that's why I talk so slow.
I thought it was because you didn't read fast.
Well, that's probably true too. I used to have a saying, I talk so slow that before she could say no, I already had.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't appreciate hearing that.
I'll tell you what, you're an honorary guy, though. I mean, and you're a great guy. I mean, I can't imagine going to Sow Bug again and not hanging out with you. I mean, and then the listeners aren't going to get it because they weren't there, but I want to invite everybody to Sow Bug if Mike's going to be there, because it was so neat hanging out and just visiting. None of us knew what was, well, at least I didn't. I didn't know what was going on. Patty invited me from the show, and I took Rick. And we just everybody clicked up and had a great time and laughed. And Gretchen, you heard about Gretchen, didn't you? While she was late on Friday morning.
No, I didn't hear.
Well, she polished off 3 bottles of wine.
I know how that goes.
She may or may not have had help.
Yeah, well, I understand. Well, yeah, I know that we talked about this a little bit at the show. But David Weingold, good friend of mine, he used to live here in Jonesboro, but now he lives in Maryville, Tennessee. But he makes his own wine. Now,
and I've got a bottle of it.
Yeah. Oh, you did? That's right.
Yes, he brought me a bottle of it.
Well, actually, he brings several cases, and when he comes, and he leaves some with me, leaves some with Michael Ames, and one thing or another. But he makes this wine. My experience with people making wine in the past has not always turned out too good.
Right.
Back when I was a kid, back in the 1960s, my grandfather, Lacke, on my dad's side, he liked to make his own wine. Now, I was just a little kid, And so I didn't have any appreciate for what it tasted like, but it tasted like crap. But he kind of liked it. Now, my grandmother, on the other hand, she was anti-alcohol, total one thing. I mean, you did not drink around my grandmother. So my grandfather, in order to make this, he had to hide it. And
Mm-hmm.
they were old because they put it in prune juice bottles. Those are
Oh.
green prune juice bottles. So you get it all mixed up and get it put into the bottles, and he had to hide it someplace. So he hid it under the chicken coop where the chickens roosted. And you know what happens? He dug a hole and he covered it with a tarpaulin, and the stuff starts to decompose, generates a little heat. And every once in a while, one of them would explode. And my grandmother could not understand why the chickens were off their eggs. And I don't think she ever found out, and he never told her.
Oh, that's really funny. What reminds me of, and we're going to start talking fishing in a minute, but this is just too funny. My grandparents were Presbyterian, so that means that only, from what my dad said, only 2 out of 10 people that are Presbyterian go to heaven, and he wasn't one, and I sure as hell wasn't another one. And it was so funny because when my grandfather passed away, I was living here, but I was looking for a place because I had a dog. And I wound up moving out and living with my grandmother in her duplex. And it was so funny because she loved, when Grandpa was no longer at the house, she loved boxing, R-rated movies, and having a beer. Forever, I thought it was her that didn't like that stuff, but it was Grandpa that didn't like it, and it was just so funny.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll tell you, the I tasted some of his wine one time. It's pretty bad. It's always really sweet, but David's wine's really, really pretty good.
yeah,
He buys the concentrated and juice. It comes like 6 gallons, and it's either concentrated and you add water, or some of it's just pure juice. They come from Italy,
yeah,
and so he gets them, brings them over. I don't know how long it takes him, but he makes all 4 or 5 batches a year. He's probably got 200 or 300 bottles of wine down in his basement,
yeah.
and
But
he just likes making it.
yeah, and he was a great guy. I thought he was from Texas too, because I met the guys from Texas, and then you two were with them. I thought all of y'all were from Texas, and I thought, well, these guys don't know a trout from a turd.
Now
But I was wrong. You guys are actually pretty good fishermen.
he's from Ohio.
Yeah,
Actually, he and Michael, I've never seen anybody like to fish more than David and Michael. I like to
yep,
fish, but I'm not like them. Michael was working for the Department of Education one time, and he told me he fished 250 something days that year while he was working.
mm-hmm,
He would stop somewhere. Now he defines fishing as catching one fish or fishing for an hour. And
yep.
so if you follow that rules, 250 some odd days. I've never seen two people like to fish as much as they do. Now David likes to eat fish. Well, we won't hold him that again. We got him a T-shirt one time says "Catch and Release of the Grease,"
Mm-hmm.
but he likes to eat the fish. He doesn't catch a bunch of them and save and stuff like that. He only catches and eats what he catches. But he likes that. Michael, on the other hand, he's a catch and release guy. But no, we get along really well. We go to the river all the time up around here. I have a little camper that I built, and I go and stay in the camper, and they sleep outside on the ground. It's built for 2 people, for me and my wife, and we're not good enough buddies for the 2 of us to sleep in there. But well, you know what I mean. And in an emergency, I might, but it'd have to be a dire emergency. But we go out there and we take. David brings a bottle of wine for each person per day, and
Oh my
that's our.
God.
Well, once about your limit.
Yeah,
Sometimes
right.
Michael will drink more. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. But we go out there and then I cook. I bring a ribeye steak, onion wrapped in foil to grill on the thing,
Mm-hmm.
baked potato, and we sit there and eat that onion, baked potato, and eat that steak. Smoke a cigar, although I don't smoke, they do, and have a good time. And we just sit there and BS. I mean, just like we
Yeah,
did the other night at Patty's. It
yeah.
was it was a great time. And there's a lot more to fishing than just catching fish. I tell my wife all the time, you got the camaraderie and all that, but there's just a whole lot more to it. And you've got to do those things every once in a while just to get out and stay happy. You know what I mean?
I get accused constantly. My friends tell me, Sean, you like to tie flies more than you like to catch fish, and you like to float and drink beer more than you like to actually try and fish. And I'm like, you know what? It's for me. I mean, I've caught fish, I'm always about catching new fish. Like I caught a sheep's head a couple years ago, and that sent me over the moon. But if I'm just going to catch trout, or if I'm just going to catch small fish, or if I'm on a stream that I've fished, like the Castor, God love it, I love that river, but I've fished it probably by this time, probably 2,000 times I've had a line in the Castor.
Yeah.
Part of it is just going and being with your friends that you haven't seen in a couple months and floating down the river and having a good time. And if you catch a fish, that's a bonus. You
Right.
know, I mean,
Right.
that's what it's about. And that's what, some of my friends, I was telling them about the sow bug, and they're like, well, are there going to be guys down there with rods and reels? And, they were like asking, and I'm like, no, it's for fly tires. They're like, well, I don't tie flies. I'm like, dude, just bring a fly box. You'll walk away with 150 flies.
Yeah.
You
That's,
know,
the sound bug is kind of special about that. Everybody there will give you a fly. If you'll sit down and take the time to watch them and pay attention. Some of
uh-huh.
these little kids come up and they just want 3 flies. They sit there and they
Right.
don't look at you when you do it, but you give them to them anyway. But you can actually fill up your entire fly box. As a matter of fact, that's the main reason David goes. He ties
Uh-huh.
some of his own flies. He just wants free flies. So he'll sit
Yeah.
there and he acts like he's paying attention, but I think he's thinking about something else. But he'll sit there and fill up his fly box. That's the main reason he goes. But that's really nice because every single one of those guys will give you a fly, no matter how long it takes. I watched Dutch Ballman one time tie a salmon fly, and he uses all these exotic. But do you know Dutch?
No, I didn't. I don't think so.
Well, anyway, Dutch, he ties salmon flies. And these are beautiful flies. He uses expensive stuff. So I sat there and watched him tie this fly. It took him 3 hours. Now, I'm an old man, and after about 2 hours, I had to go pee.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to leave because I knew he's going to give me the fly. So I
Yeah.
sat there and tied my legs in a knot and finally watched him. He finally did. And then I ran to the bathroom. But it takes him forever to tie one. And then he has so much material and money into it, but he still gives you the fly. And I
Yeah.
said, how can you afford to do that? And he says, you took the time to watch me. And
Yeah.
everybody at the Sow Bug is like that. I gave away a ton of flies. I know you did too. You brought
Yeah.
me some.
Yeah. Well, it's like George. I mean, George has never listened to a podcast. We were talking about that because you guys are like, yeah, well, we'll get George on the podcast. And Mike George.
Uh huh.
And he emailed me today and he goes, I've never even listened to a podcast. How do I know what I'm getting into? But he sat there, and I'm not complaining at all. Don't think I'm complaining. But he showed me and another guy how to tie this fly. I came home and I tied four of them
Really?
in the amount of time it took him to tie one while he was explaining everything to me. But that's what it was. He sat and he explained how he was wrapping the deer hair,
And
how he
why?
was holding the deer hair, the angle at which he cut the deer hair.
Yep.
You can't buy that kind of experience.
No, it's amazing to watch him. It takes him a long time to tie those flies. I don't tie many deer hair flies myself because it takes so long, but uh, he really is quite amazing. And he's won several awards too.
Yeah.
And he'll just sit there and talk to you. And when he gets done, he'll give you the fly.
And the only deer hair flies I have tied, I've tried stacking and spinning and all this stuff. I can tie a clouser with deer tail. I can do a really good clouser.
Yeah.
But when I got home after watching him, I came in because I went ahead and left on what was the last day was Saturday.
Right.
I come home and I left all my stuff was in the truck. I come in, I looked at my wife and said, "Don't talk to me." She goes, "What?" I said, "Don't talk to me." I run downstairs and I grabbed a little bit of deer hair that I had and I tied up four of those and I bought some pine squirrel before I left because that's what he used for that little tail. And I tied up four of those and she goes, "What?" I said, "Don't talk to me." I said, "I've got to tie these while I know how to do it."
Yeah. I
And
know.
they're amazing. They just amazing flies. And that's the great thing about watching some of these folks.
I know what you mean about that. Every one of these I go to, the Southern Council has their fly show in uh, the first weekend in October. This year it's going to be January the 29th and the 30th and October the 1st. there's a lot of emphasis on fly tying, but you also have the equipment stuff. So you can tell your friend that wants to see rods and things to come to that one. It's great. I've been tying there and at the Sow Bug for about 20 years, and I never, ever go and don't learn something.
No.
And that's the whole thing. One of the reasons I started Bugcrafters was because, you sit there and you tie and you do things the same way so often, it's just kind of automatic. You just do it and go through the motions. And if you got a bunch of people sitting around watching you, you got a beginner over here, he doesn't want to ask questions because he doesn't want to look stupid, or he doesn't want to take your time to have you answer something, one thing or another. So he doesn't ask questions. And so what I try to do on my website is it's for beginners. I make a lot of mistakes on it. I really envy these guys that get up there and talk you through a fly and don't ever miss a beat. I can't do that. But anyway, it's for the beginners. And so I'll tell you to attach the tying thread. If you don't know how to attach the tying thread, you click on a link and it'll take you to a video where I show you how to attach the tying thread. And you can watch it as many times as you want. You think that something like that is really simple if you're used to tying. But you take the beginner and he gets on there and all he does is see your hand whip around that, doesn't know how many times it goes, and he tries it and pulls on his thread and it slips right off the hook. That kind of thing. Soft loop. How to make material stay on top of the hook with the soft loop. I have one video that I have several videos on YouTube, but I have one that I put on video too that shows how to make a half hitch tool out of a ballpoint pen, tip of a ballpoint pen. It's been washed 56,000 times. I was amazed. Something that simple. And people said, "Oh man, a great deal." But everybody that ties flies knows how to do that. But you can watch it over and over again. And that's what we tried to do that's why I got started doing the Bugcrafters website and the Bugcrafters channel on YouTube. It's been kind of fun. I get a lot of comments. You get a lot of people on there that feed you a lot of bull too sometimes,
Well, that's me. I have like 35 YouTube accounts, and I just shit post on you all the time.
So I can expect that on mine now.
Well, you can do the same thing to mine. It doesn't matter. You can get on Kayak Flyer and just make, harassing comments.
Well, I'm sitting there tying flies, telling somebody how to do this. You come up behind them and say, "Don't believe a word he says." You did that the entire meeting. You know how tired I got of that? And I'm sitting there.
You didn't. You laughed every time I walked by.
I'm trying to keep a straight face. And here you are. And this poor little kid, he doesn't know what's going on.
I said that 3 times the whole show.
Oh, a lot more than that.
Oh, no, I didn't. I'll tell you what. But I love to sit and watch you tie. I mean, you were one of the. I don't want to say you were you were one of the bottom level mediocre tires.
Yeah, I understand.
You
got to start somewhere. Work your way up.
All I was doing was dubbing brush flies.
Well, I'll tell you what, I like that dubbing brush that you made. I don't usually tie flies that big, but that was a really neat little tool.
I've got to send you some because I've been tying some on size 14 of the dubbing brush.
Is that right?
I've been making dubbing brushes that are about 3/4 of an inch wide. Oh, so you can actually take like a crawfish, say take a size 10 hook, tie your dumbbell eyes on the bottom of it, make you some. If you want to use pine squirrel, you use pine squirrel. If you want to use a schlappen feather for
claws.
For claws, and then wrap that dubbing brush around it, then tie it off. And if you really want to get fancy, you can put some bug back across it and lay it down with some wire. But I mean, there's no need to do that.
No.
But that's a pretty neat deal. And Rick from Oasis Benches makes a hell of a dubbing brush table.
Yeah, that was really nice. I'll have to admit, I was impressed with that. And you did a good job using it and showing off your flies also.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I was just messing around. I wasn't doing anything big or special. I mean, I went down there thinking I was going to make dubbing brushes. And then when I got down there, Rick was like, "I want you to tie some flies." And I'm like, "Oh." So I went over to Dooley's Fly Shop. Save 15% when you use promo code kayak at dooleyflyfishing.com. I went over to Dooley's and I bought a bunch of stuff. And that's where I sold those flies that are up at Brainbugscom right now, the carp crepe.
Yeah, I just started to say you tied some up and sold them. You told me about that.
Yeah, and I tied the dubbing brush. I tied one dubbing brush, and then Rick had me showing stuff. And so I used my dubbing brush and I said, "Hey, Rick, I need this." And he whipped me out 3 more dubbing brushes and bang, I got that entire order out in less than an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
You're going to
know,
report that to the IRS, right?
well, I would, but I did it pro bono.
Well, I started to say, if you didn't, I would for you.
I know you would. I know you're that kind of guy.
That'd be a good friend. Good friend. No, I tell you what, I always have fun and always enjoy meeting people. I like seeing all the old guys,
Hmm.
people that we've seen for years. You know, unfortunately, many of the old guys passed away,
Yes.
and that's really kind of sad. And I look around and I realize that I'm probably one of the old guys now.
Yeah. Well, I look at you right now. I can tell you are.
Well, I'm older than you, that's for sure, but I'm a lot younger in spirit. I'll guarantee you that.
I probably got more mileage though.
Been real hard to put up with.
I tell you what, it's been bad. My dad always told me, "Live hard, die young, and leave a good-looking corpse." And I've got two of the three. All right.
Yes, that right? Well, I hope you don't get. I hope you don't get the last. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
want to slide into the grave kicking and screaming.
Like my buddy says, he goes, "I hope to die at the ripe old age of 98 by the hands of a jealous lover."
uh,
Yeah.
that's
But now
wishful thinking.
you're a fishy guy, and go ahead before we get into the fishy part because we're going to talk fishy a whole lot, and we're already blowing through time like crazy, and we're going to have you back on. We just know that. But go ahead and tell us a little bit more about bugcrafters.com because I'm a big fan of Tony at River Road. He's been very nice to me. Um, with getting the cutters, River Road Creation cutters. But you actually have a little bit different way that you're doing stuff, and you gave me a couple of packages, and I haven't tied them yet. I've been waiting to do that because I want to do it outside with a nice video and put it up on my YouTube channel. But can you tell us a little bit what all you guys do, what you do over there?
Well, I've had the Bugcrafters website for a number of years, and I was I practiced medicine, and it turns out I didn't have as much time to keep it up as I needed to. Now that I've retired, I'm doing a whole lot more, trying to do a whole lot more with it, trying to get a whole lot more people to come to it and visit. And like I said, it's for people that wants to learn how to tie flies. And I show different techniques and different flies that they can tie. And when you tie one fly, you learn a technique, then you move on to the next fly. And the thing is that the flies all catch fish too. So as you go along, you can tie flies that catch fish, learn new techniques. And when you're done, you've got all the tools that you need to be able to tie pretty much any fly that you want. Uh, when I went to the International Fly Tying Symposium up in New Jersey,
Hmm.
had an absolute blast. Always wanted to go, never had a chance to, but got up there and met a lot of really good tires, famous people. Barry Ord Clark was there. Now, Barry Ord Clark, if you don't know who he is, he's Fly Tire of the Year for Fly Tire Magazine. And he ties these beautiful videos. And he gets on there and he sits down and says, "Oh, that's about right," does all this, and everything comes out perfect the first time. And I asked him, I said, "Barry, do you ever make a mistake?" He says, "Not that you see." He
Yeah.
says, but his videos are not edited, or they don't appear to be.
Yeah.
Uh, he says, "I tie a dozen of the fly before I start down and try to video it." And
Hmm.
so, but there was a ton of nice people there. And there's this guy from uh, some European country, I forget where it was, and he had these little foam bodies cut with a laser engraver or a laser cutter, and he was selling these foam bodies. And I bought a sample of them, and really fairly cheap. And he told me that he used a laser to cut them out. And I said, "Well, will you share your file with me so I can print some?" He said, "No, it took me a year to do it." I said, "Oh, well." I came home and I had a laser engraver, and so I sat down. And in a couple of hours, I had me a G code for these flies, and so I printed a bunch of them. And the cutter does a really good job. Not all foam prints as easily. The colored foams print much easier than the white. White won't hardly cut at all. Black will cut right through like hot knife through butter. And it has to do, I think, with the absorption of the color. So it took me a while to get all that set up. But then what I did is I have these 8 bodies on a piece of foam. I put them in a little Ziploc bag, and inside's my card, and inside is the Q code for the video or for the instructions on how to tie these things. And so I
Uh-huh.
gave these away at the show. I don't sell them. I give them away. If somebody ties them, uses them all, wants more, they can send me a self-addressed envelope, and I'll send them another package of it, self-addressed stamped envelope, and I'll just stick a couple of them in there and send them to them. I'm not trying to make money with it or trying to sell it. I just thought it was a neat idea. But they make really nice beetles, tremendous for trout during terrestrial season, and also for brim. And I like catching brim. I fish a lot in
Uh-huh.
ponds now, and it's nothing like seeing a brim come up and hit a top water. You know, your heart. You ever go quail hunting? You know how when the covey comes
Oh
up
yeah.
around you, how your heart goes. You know, like that. I love that, and that's just the way it is with the brim. I've been that way since I've been fishing with my grandfather when I was 10 years old. But that's how I got started doing those little bodies. Now, this guy was selling for like $2 for 8 of them. Can't make a lot of money. He didn't seem to sell very many of them, but I just give them away. And the reason I do that is so people will go to my website and
Yep.
visit. And I've noticed that since I went to the show, that the number of visits to that particular thing has doubled. And so
Yep.
I'm real happy with that. But
Well,
that's what I try to do.
you really should be. I'm gonna brag for a minute. I'm just gonna brag. Uh, the guy that I sold the flies to at Brainbugscom, my show dropped the other day at 4 a.m. Before lunch, he emailed me and he said he had 2 new customers.
Good.
So you may be cutting out some more foam before long now that you've told people it's free.
Well, that's not a problem. I just want to
Yeah.
get people to go to the website
Yeah.
and build the things. I'd like to be able to do like Barry Clark or Davey McPhail. I know you've probably seen some of his videos.
Uh-huh.
They're tremendous. I can't do that. I cannot tie and talk at the same time.
Uh,
And I keep hitting my camera with my hands. So I have to
uh,
edit. So uh, I'd like to be able to do that. That'd be tremendous. And
yeah.
I've got some patterns that I've developed one thing or another that I'm working on, and some old things, new materials,
Uh-huh.
one thing or another. You know, we're talking about the shows we're going to one time. I hate to go to a show and somebody comes up and says, "Want me to show you how to tie that fly?" You ever had that happen?
No, but I heard about Bob Clouser getting told that he didn't use enough hair when he
Oh
was
yeah,
tying
Bob
the
told
Clouser. No.
he told that at the conclave one time. He and
Uh,
Michael and I were sitting in there when he was tying, and he was telling that story. And I can't believe it. But this guy comes up and I was tying soft hackles, and I tie my soft hackle in by the tip.
uh-huh.
A couple reasons I do that. First of all, the stem is thinner,
Uh-huh.
and once you trim the side off and pull the base hackles off, so that you're left with just about 3/8 of an inch of hackle, you can wind it around. By the time you've got your second wrap done, all you're left with is the stem. It's easy to tie off, and that works. But people like Dave Hughes and the way it was traditionally done, tied it with the stem thick at the front, wound
Uh-huh.
back, took the thread through it. You bind down fibers. It doesn't work well for me. There is no good one way to tie a fly. There's several
Uh-huh.
ways. Whatever works best for you is what you do. But I hate it when people come up and say, "You want me to show you how to tie that fly?" I said, "Well, I'll be glad to watch, but I'm not going to change what I do."
Yeah. Looks
But
like I've never tied a bugger with wire.
a
And
bugger
I'm
with
gonna tell you
wire.
what, a bugger. I've never tied a bugger with a wire wrap. And I'm gonna tell you why. I've never had a bugger last long enough that it come apart.
Well,
I mean, it, it's
if you try
between
to,
the.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you try to get your bronze level thing, you'll have to tie it with wire. That's the only way they'll do it.
And I can do it, but it's like I either lose it, I pop it off, you know what I mean, or before I've never had one shred. I've never kept one long enough that it shredded.
Yeah,
Now
I know exactly what you mean. I don't do it either.
I know how to do it, and I will counter spin and wire wrap and do all the different things on other flies. But when it comes down to a bugger, it's a bugger.
Yeah.
And
Now, where are you from?
I'm from here in southeast Missouri.
Oh, that's north of the Mason-Dixon line.
No, bite your tongue. We drink sweet tea and have good barbecue.
We call those woolly boogers. You only call
Yeah,
them woolly buggers if you're from up north.
no, they're woolly buggers.
Woolly booger.
We don't. Well, we don't say booger a lot,
Well, see, I'm from the south.
but I used to think I was from the south. Then I met you old boys and them Texas guys, and I figured out that I like pork way too damn much for you guys to want to have my barbecue. I got a little Memphis and Kansas City in me when it comes to my barbecue.
Well, my son's getting ready to go to residency. He's a doctor also, and he is going to go into a pathology resident in Kansas City. And
Hmm.
so he's getting ready to move up there in July. So I'm going to be eating some of that barbecue.
I'm gonna tell you what now, and this is common knowledge. All right, but Gates's barbecue started off as basically what you would consider now to be a food truck, and it was raccoon and possum and stuff like that. And I'm not gonna lie, I've eaten it. I've eaten that stuff. I mean,
I've eaten raccoon.
Yeah, I grew up in the country. You throw anything on a fire low enough and slow enough, you got good eating.
I've
And
never I've never eaten a possum. It's just getting over the look. It's like eating rooster fries the first time.
I've
They
never had rooster fries.
well, they're
Uh,
great. They're
I
great.
hear that.
When I was growing up, we'd go down to the chicken house where they process chickens.
Hmm.
You could get a 20-pound bag of rooster fries frozen for $5.
Oh, you can't get them. You can't touch them
That's
now.
the
They're so damn expensive now.
that's
See,
the cheapest meat around. The cheapest meat around. And
my brother-in-law loves them, and you cannot get them cheap anymore.
we'd go down and get those, and you have to skin them and kind of shell them out of that tunica that's around them,
Hmm.
and then deep fry them, French fries and salad, drink a little beer. Man, there's nothing better. But I have to admit, it took me a long time to bite into one. But
Yep.
when I did, I found out that I liked it. But possum's a lot like that. It's just the look, and it's also
Hmm.
very fat. And so
Hmm.
I don't
But
think
that's what makes it
I'm going to try
barbecue
that.
well because it gets all greasy and it doesn't dry out.
Yeah, but it drips all over you.
You know what I want to try for barbecue? I want to eat a barbecue goat.
Well,
I want to do a
I,
whole goat barbecue.
I have eaten goat. The problem with whole pigs and whole goats when you do it, everybody wants to dig a hole, put the coals in the ground, put the pig on
Uh,
top of it. I've never seen one of those come out. I said,
I've seen them come out before, and they're good when they do that. But it's an art. You have to learn from somebody that can do it.
well, a lot of times the outside's overdone, the inside's not done. You go buy a
Right.
bunch of hot dogs for your
Yeah.
meal. That's
And
what usually
it's
happens to us. You have to have a
yeah.
lot of beer to eat that.
Well, and I think part of it is you put coals into it. Well, like with a full pig, when you split it open, you put coals into it. You
Yeah,
don't just put the pig in there. But I've got a big enough smoker. I can put a goat on there.
really, that's because that smoker.
And I'm tell you what, if I don't have a smoker big enough, I'll make one big enough.
Well, there you go.
I'll tell you what, we'll get us an old bourbon barrel and we'll fill that thing up with smoke off a firebox, and we'll have us a good old time.
I like those bourbon barrels. Every once in a while, you can find a little bourbon still left in them.
That you can.
Yeah.
Speaking of bourbon, now let me ask you a question. I heard this when we was at Salbug. Is it true that you catch more fish because you eat really garlicky and salty food with your left hand while you're tying your flies and then claim they're not scented?
You heard that from me?
I no, I heard that down there. That's what somebody. It may have been me telling me that, but I heard that. I heard that's why you catch fish.
I've
Is that
never heard.
you preseason your flies before you tie them?
I've never heard anybody say that. Although at one time, Dave Whitlock was proponent of using scented baits or
Yeah.
scented flies,
Well, I just
and he got so much backlash over that he had to stop. He stopped doing it. Dave's a good guy,
yeah.
and but he was sending his flies, and he stopped doing that. And apparently it worked. Of course, fish can smell.
Oh, I tell
You
you what, every fly I tie, I'm sitting there eating garlic and potato chips every time I tie them for me, and then I wash my hands really good before I tie flies for my friends.
Yeah, it's worthwhile if it works. I tell you, have you ever been to Lake Conway down north of Little Rock?
No, I haven't. I've been by it, but I've never been into it. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a fan of Arkansas. I hit the Spring River a
Yeah,
lot. I hit it
that's just
a
because you want to
lot.
watch the girls coming down the river in
Oh,
the
I like the
canoes.
girls who go woo. But you get down there early enough, you take your lawn chair and your cooler, and then you fish until about 11 o'clock. Then the girls go woo, and about 4 o'clock you start fishing again.
I've caught fish underneath their canoes as they're going by before.
I tell you what, but it's a great fishery. That's the damnedest thing, and you can get walleye. You're
Yep.
talking about eating fish. I like walleye and crappie when I'm talking about eating fish, and then saltwater fish.
Well, let me tell you about Lake Conway for just a second, and we'll talk about walleye
Mhm.
in Minnesota. Uh, going down there. When I was at medical school, this doctor one time, he says, you need to see what a doctor does on his day off. I said, okay. He said, I'll pick you up 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Well, I was a little late getting up, and he was sitting down in his truck asleep. But when I got out there, he said, we're going to let Conway, and we're going to go catch some brim. And he said, when I was a kid growing up, that lake wasn't there. He says, I know where all these river beds are. They're bedding right now. He says, we're going to catch some brim.
Yeah.
So he takes me out there, and to this day, I remember exactly which trails to get to where it was at. I'm not telling anybody, but I remember exactly where it was at. But we get out there, and we were using fly rods, but we weren't using flies. We were using crickets and a quill floater. And before that quill floater could stand up, the thing would just slide under the water. We were catching so many brim. And he told me, he said, now, if somebody comes along, you got a fish on, you leave it there. I don't want anybody to know this is here. And so sure enough, that happened. My rod's bent double. And somebody says, you got one? I said, no, I'm hung up, So, well, I'm a fisherman, I lie. So anyway, we catch a bunch of fish. I go back home, back to Little Rock. In medical school, they group you with people. And one of my buddies in my group, he liked to fish, lived around the corner from me. I said, we're going to go fishing tomorrow. So we went back to the Mayflower exit, Lake Conway, and rented a boat. And I went right straight out to these things. And each of us had a big thing of crickets.
Yeah.
And we went out there, and we caught 150 brim that morning.
Damn.
I know 50 is a limit apiece. We were a little bit over.
Yeah.
And that's the only time that's ever happened in my life. I've never been over the limit before.
Yeah.
But we came in. It took us longer to clean those things than it did catch them.
Yeah.
And we got back to the launch where we were in the boat, and the lady came out. She said, well, I don't guess you had much luck. Nobody else did. The wind was kind of high. I said, no, and I held up this stringer with 150 brim on it. And she got her camera and took a picture of it, and it was in the paper the next day.
Oh, shit.
I knew for sure the game fish was going to come after me.
Yeah.
But they didn't. Anyway, I took my dad back out there. But this was after they were off their beds. We were just going to fishing around the trees and things. And I was spitting on my cricket. Now, you talk about flavoring your bait. I was spitting on my cricket. I would catch fish. My dad and my brother-in-law did not do that, and they weren't catching a thing, and they did not believe me. And finally, we put our crickets down side by side. I would catch a fish, and they wouldn't. And you know what? They were both spitting on it by the time the day was over and catching fish.
I would understand it. I mean, there's something about it. There's just, I know guys who smoke and the tobacco on their fingers, the fish turn away from. I'm fat. I got a bag of, I'm fat. I'm not going to lie. I got beef jerky on me at all times. I tie out a fly and I catch fish. I know it's something to do with, I'm not baking them. It's not like I'm eating beef jerky just to catch fish. I'm fat.
You think about it, you've seen water that's so turbid and muddy you can't see a fraction in front of an inch in front of you. Fish still feed. How do they do that? Sense of smell.
Sense of smell and lateral lines.
Yep, exactly right.
That's all it is. It's the movement, the vibration, and the smell.
So there's something that attracts them. You were talking about walleye a while ago. You got time for another little story?
We got plenty of time, buddy. And if we ain't got time, we'll make more time.
Been up to the Boundary Waters about 8-9 times now. And I've been up there with Michael, been up there with David, been up with the family, some other guys, one thing or another. And we go up there, and David and I, we got to where we've got our packs down to about 30 pounds apiece. Food, 30 pounds for equipment, and canoe. So we got down where the two of us can go and stay for a week and not be too big a deal. Now, these days it's getting harder for me to walk and carry my half of the stuff, so we're probably not going to go back. But we used to do that a lot, and it was absolutely wonderful. You get out there, and there's not another soul around. So we went in to get our permit. The lady said, y'all going fishing? Oh, yeah. Well, hope you had good luck. Most people else not going to. So we get out on the lake, and we have a blast. You can catch 5-pound smallmouth up there all day long on a topwater fly. And they come up and hit that pike will come up and take it too. It's just unbelievable. So we go back in, and Lacey says, well, I don't guess you had very much luck. Said, nobody else has. Says, what are you talking about? We caught a ton of fish. And she says, really? Where'd you catch them? Top waters? She says, oh, you're bass fishing. If you're not walleye fishing, they don't think you're fishing up there.
Yeah.
Now, I love to go in and eat them. and get the walleye tacos and the walleye sandwiches. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're not fishing for walleye, you're not fishing. You just might as well not be out there. But if you're fishing for walleye in a canoe, you're trolling.
Yeah.
And if you're trolling, that's work. And I was a fat fisherman, always looking for skinny water and stupid fish. And so I don't like that work, And so we didn't troll. Now, occasionally you'd catch one or a lake trout or something, but the fishing up there is unbelievable. And the camping is even better. You get up there and see a few bears every once in a while, wolves. Had a wolf walk into our camp one time and he sniffed around and left. But nevertheless, it's absolutely beautiful. And you say you got an 11-year-old son. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And I've got two daughters, and my son is the youngest.
Oh, how old are your daughters?
Well, my oldest daughter is 17, and this is a funny story. I may have mentioned on the show before. She's got a little boyfriend who's 17, and he decided he was going to take her fishing.
Uh-oh.
And he was strict. He had a really nice. It's like a $300 or $400 bait caster set up, and he decides that he's going to rig her up a spinning reel. And she grabs that bait caster and just flips that thing right underneath the tree while he's stringing up the spinner for her, and gets a fish and gets it in and everything else. And no bird's nest, no nothing. And she looks at him. She goes, "Are you about ready to finish up with your rod to go fishing?" And he just damn near shit his pants. And she's laughing her ass off. She goes, "What, your dad didn't make you, toss into solo cups in the backyard with a bait caster and then teach you to fly fish after you mastered that?"
Well, you should take them up there with you to
I,
Minnesota. It's
I
great.
should, yeah. And I've actually got family in Minnesota, and we don't speak about them normally because they're Yankees, and they think barbecue sauce is ketchup, but
Don't you
um,
know?
and they call it pop instead of
Yep.
Coke.
Yep.
They got a lot of problems up there in Minnesota, but fishing ain't one of them. But yeah, it's it's really funny. And then my middle daughter, she doesn't like to shoot or hunt or fish, which my other two do. So my middle daughter and I, we go have lunch together.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Uh, tea, huh?
Yes.
I know what you mean. You should take them up there. It's unbelievable. I took my daughter up there, and she's not much of a camper or a fisher either, but she had an absolute blast. Got
Mm-hmm.
a little cold because it rained. This was in end of May.
Yes. They
Oh,
still had
I'm
snow in the cul-de-sac when I was up there in May. I
yeah.
was up there at the end of May, and they still had snow about 9 foot in the cul-de-sac at my aunt and uncle's house.
Well, the ice was already off the water and everything, but if you go before June 1st, you don't have so many mosquitoes. You
Right.
may have black flies, but you won't have as many mosquitoes.
Well, their
If you
mosquitoes are what we consider to be what robins and cardinals
oh
in size.
I've been up there a long time ago when the mosquitoes were out, and they're pretty good size. They're relentless. You got to wear a head net. You got to keep your hands
Mm-hmm.
covered and shirt all the time, and all kinds of DEET and stuff like that. They can get really bad. But if you go before June the 1st, if you go after August the 15th, now after August 15th, you won't have as many mosquitoes, but you'll have house flies,
Yeah.
green bottle flies for some reason. But they
Mm-hmm.
don't bite. Now horse flies will bite you,
Oh yeah.
but uh, but the green bottle flies, but no mosquitoes. Black flies can be as bad, and tons of midges. I mean, you get out there and there's just swarms of midges going up and down there, and you would think that the fish would be eating those things. Nothing coming to the surface. Of course, there's not trout in there. It's just bass, and I guess
Right.
maybe that's too small a meal for the bass. But they make so much noise, you got to stick your fingers in your ears sometimes. And if you don't have a head net, you can't breathe.
Yep.
But it's absolutely beautiful. You can go up there, and sometimes you'll not see a soul. Sometimes every campsite will be taken. You've got to get a permit to get in, one thing or another. But it's really fairly inexpensive if you don't hire a guide or something like that.
You
But
know what?
we had an absolute blast.
You know the one place that I've been that was just absolutely weird as all get out with bugs. I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and when did I go? I went in May. No, no, I went in August. I went in July. I went the end of July, beginning of August. The only house flies or bugs you saw were around a dumpster. If
Yeah.
you didn't walk past, like if you had to park at a restaurant near a dumpster, there'd be flies. there were no mosquitoes. Now, there were rattlesnakes like crazy, but there were no mosquitoes or anything else.
we were
And
on the
that was just really weird for me.
we were on the
And
Gallatin not too long ago, and the houseflies were really bad. And the guy in town spoke about it. And they were having some kind of a problem. Everybody was having houseflies, but that was not normal. But the mosquitoes are not all that bad if you're prepared for them.
yeah, and but now we got to get to we're running out of time, and I feel like you and I are just sitting here talking. I mean, because this is how great this is. I mean, hell, I'm going to call you after the show. We'll finish up wrapping up talking about talking, but you have done some pretty cool fishing trips and had some pretty cool experiences.
Yeah, I've been blessed to go a lot of different places. Michael and David and I, uh, we go and we don't spend a lot of money. We're really very economical. We'll sleep in the car. We'll sleep on the ground. We'll sleep in the tent. On
Well,
occasion, we'll rent a hotel room. One thing or another.
so
Went
you're
down to
German.
Belize, huh?
You're telling me you're German.
I'm telling you, he's Jewish.
My neighbor married a gal who's Jew, and he says he is Jewish.
Yeah, we went down to Belize with a bunch of guys. And have you ever been to Belize?
Dude, I've never been out of the country. I figure there's only two types of people in the world: Americans and people who want to be Americans.
Well, that's the truth right now, especially. Well, we went down to Belize, and you go down there, and they've got some nice resorts. You see them advertised in the magazines and stuff. $240 a night. You go to the restaurant; it's $80 for your meal. That's just for one meal. That's not for
Yeah.
everybody's. One thing, another. We stayed at a place called Ruby's. Ruby's is a hostel. $40 a night. We had one room, two beds. $20 a night's what it cost us. It was
Yeah.
clean. We had air conditioning. We had fresh sheets every day, and they had a little restaurant down at the bottom. We stayed there for $20 for a week. It's $100.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. We ate off the street. Now they say in Belize that if the stuff is made at home and brought in, especially if it's dairy, you don't eat it because you
Right.
catch something. But if you see it cooked, it's okay to eat. So we'd go down to the little restaurant in the morning and get these things called, I think it's called pupusas or something like that. It's a little meat sandwich that they fix right there. We get a couple of those, bottle of water, put them in our fanny pack, and walk down to the flats and go bone fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Had an absolute blast. Caught my first and only bonefish, but I did catch one, and it was fun. But you get out there and wade and get to meet a whole new people. They speak English,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very very clean place. The kids go to I think it's a Catholic school, and they're all wearing uniforms, fresh
Mm-hmm.
white shirts, pressed pants, skirts, one thing another. Very polite, one thing another. But boy, do they like to party. Now this is the
Mm-hmm.
reason you ought to go. They party all night long. If you have a room that's on the beach and they're walking by, you can't get any sleep because they're going all night long. And there is a bar down there that's got a checkerboard like thing in the center of it and chicken wire around it. And they take this chicken and drop it over the wire. And you take bets on which square it's going to shit on. I'm serious. And you've got 60, 70, 80 people in there betting on where this chicken's going to shit. And everybody's drinking beer, and they're half looped one thing or another. But there's people that go there expecting to win.
Oh my God.
Well, I got to watching. And when they drop the chicken over the thing, it almost always goes shit immediately. So I bet on those squares where they were dropping them. I didn't win anything, but it was really interesting to watch. I'm not making this up. Anybody that's been down there knows exactly what I'm talking about and knows exactly where the place is. I
I'm
guarantee
not,
you.
I'm not ever going to call you a liar, but my God, I'd never bet on chicken shit.
It was mostly the tourist betting.
Oh.
They got this beer down there that's called it's Guinness's, but it's not made in England. It's made
Right.
over there, a local plant, and they call them Little Black Beauties, and they absolutely love those things. They're about, I think, 7% alcohol, one thing or another. But
Mm-hmm.
they'll drink those things. We didn't like them. We bought a bunch of them. We ended up trading them for 2 cases of their blonde lager, which is called Lighthouse beer. It was really
Mm-hmm.
pretty good. We
Yeah.
got two of those for each one of the little Black Beauties that we traded in. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting place. But Belize is one place that we went. Been up to the Boundary Waters 8 or 9 times. My favorite place is Yellowstone. Have you ever been to Yellowstone?
No, I try not to go north. I'm not going to lie. I try not to go. I love Louisiana. I mean, when I go for a fishing trip, I want to go down to Grand Isle or Port Sulphur. I want to go down south of New Orleans and get on the Gulf. That's where I want to go.
Well, you and Michael will be perfect for each other because he loves saltwater fishing. I'm not much of a saltwater fisherman. I don't like getting out on the boat in open water. But
I like it when
nevertheless,
you've got gators, sharks, and dolphins all in the same place.
well, I'm an old scuba diver, so I've been diving with those. I just don't like to go out there fishing. I like to have my gear on if I'm going underwater. I don't trust his boat handling as much perhaps as I should. But anyway, my favorite place is Yellowstone. You go up there, they've got beautiful rivers. The only thing is during the summer months, it is crowded. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. There's a place up there called Soda Butte. Now, it's actually Soda Butte, 2 words, but you got to say it real fast, Soda Butte. So you go to Soda Butte, and it
Something they
runs.
do fast in the north is say that word. Everything else in the north is really slow.
Anyway, part of it runs through a little meadow, and there'll be a ton of people out there fishing. We're sitting there fishing on this thing, and there's a grassy plain over here, and there's a bank of the river is up probably, maybe 6, 7 feet, and there's buffalo everywhere. That's exactly what they're doing. They're rutting, and it sounds just exactly like that. And this old bull comes up, and he's standing on the top of this ledge, and it's about a 6, 7 foot drop. I'm hoping he doesn't come where I'm fishing. Decide to come over, and I'm sitting there casting. I said, I could catch him on the balls with my fly. And I thought about doing it, but then I thought, how would I release him? That's going to be the hard part. I didn't want to lose my fly because I've been catching fish on it.
Oh my God.
But anyway, they're up there doing their thing, and finally they go down, and there's a place where they can cross. They did come across. Now they're on both sides of us, and we're in the middle of them. And you don't want to get around those things. Every year somebody's gored up there.
Oh yeah, buffalo are not friendly.
Well, they say to stay 25 feet from them, but every year somebody gets scored. When I was in the Army out there, a bunch of us got drunk. We decided we were going to go ride a buffalo, and the closer we got, the bigger they got, and we decided not to. Smartest move we ever made.
You ever see the YouTube video of the guys sitting there on their motorcycles taking pictures to their left, and the guy's got the video camera to the right, and the buffalo comes and knocks that 2,000-pound Harley Davidson to shit? Yeah, you can see that on YouTube. That's why I would never take a Harley to Yellowstone.
Every day, the buffalo come down, cross the Lamar, the highway going to the river, Lamar Valley, going to the river. And so we're going along, and everybody's stopping to look. Here comes the buffalo. There's 2 motorcycles in front of us. Well, first there's 1 buffalo, not a big deal. Then there's 2, then there's 10. And all of a sudden, these guys are pushing their bikes back.
Yeah.
I just pulled around and got in front so they be out of their way. But hopefully they appreciated that. But nevertheless, Soda Butte, that little area there, you can catch a lot of trout. Everybody fishes there. But if you'll go up the road a little bit more to a place called Trout Lake, which doesn't have much trout in it, but it's got to turn off where you can park, walk to the other side of the road. There, the Soda Butte is pocket water. It's relatively fast. I caught a ton of fish in there on my Tenkara rod. Had an absolute blast. And nobody fishes over there because I guess they don't know it's there. You got to walk over to it.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, you'll see a bear.
Yeah. But I know a guy who I used to work for. He was a principal of the school I was at, and he would go to Yellowstone almost every year, and he fly fished, and he was a Lutheran, so we're going to try not to hold that against him. But he's a Lutheran, and he would take a bottle of wine, and his wife liked to hike, and they would hike up, and then he would fly fish. And I think he said they were like 75 yards away from when they walked back, and there was a bear track over his footprint. And, and he's just like, he goes, I never saw it. I never smelled it. I never knew it was there, but we spent an hour over here. It was like an hour and a half, 2 hours they spent there. That he spent an hour fly fishing, and they drank a bottle of wine and blah, and who knows what else. And then he goes, we come back, he goes, and there was a bear print over my footprint.
Oh, that's scary. We see a lot of bear droppings and other things up there when we were up in Minnesota. You know how you can tell bear droppings from others?
How?
They smell like pepper and they have little pieces of metal in it.
From the jingle bells and the pepper spray.
Jingle bells on the side of the pack and the pepper spray. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I
I'm gonna tell
told
you
the
what. That's one thing. I'm not a trophy hunter by any stretch of the imagination. I hunt. I'm basically now. I just hunt for the camaraderie of it. I like going to deer camp and I like doing that. And I've gotten some nice deer. And you know, for me, I like the smaller the deer, the better taste. I mean that's just the way I am. More tender, not as gamey. I'm just putting stuff in the freezer when I go. But the only thing I would want to trophy hunt would be a big bear, and I would want to do it with a handgun and a spear.
and a spear.
Yeah, when all else fails, I fall down and I can try to poke it to death. But
I'm
I
not
mean,
sure that would work.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know these guys like to go out and they like to do different hunts, and I'm fine. I don't have a problem if it's legal. Do it.
Well,
If you've got a permit, do it. You know what I mean?
I've got a
But the
good
only thing I could imagine hunting for the thrill of hunting would be a big grizzly bear.
I've got a good friend up here that has gotten a bear permit up in Minnesota a couple of times when he goes up there. But what they do is they climb a tree and they bait them.
Yeah,
They put
and you've got to for black bears, and
and there's not
you
much
can bait
sport in that, I don't think.
you can bait them in Arkansas.
Yeah, I don't see much sport in that. I don't eat a lot of wild game. I don't eat a lot of fish because my wife is from Los Angeles,
Oh my
and
god!
she doesn't like that stuff. She won't eat fish. She won't eat any game. She thinks the only meat that you can eat comes from a grocery store, and that's chicken or steak. And she won't go camping, and she won't go fishing. And we get along real well.
Yeah,
But
I bet.
she doesn't mind that I go. As a matter of
Well,
fact,
that's
she
yeah,
calls David and Michael my girlfriends.
yeah.
And so it's okay for me to go with my girlfriends. We were here at the house one time. My son was over and had one of his girl dash friends here, and they were talking. And she said, "Well, what's your dad doing?" She said, "Well, he's getting ready to go camping with his girlfriends." And she looked at him. She turned around and looked at my wife. Turned around and looked at him. She said, "Is she okay with that?" I said, "Yeah." So anyway,
Hmm.
but
No.
we did get on. But she won't cook it, and she won't eat it. So I don't eat game like that. Now I love deer summer sausage.
Oh my goodness, we do. My father-in-law is a butcher by trade.
Uh huh.
So after he came home he was 101st Airborne in Vietnam. So I mean, he's a bad motherfucker, as they say. And he came back and he started doing butcher work. And we never send anything to the processor. We've got the table saws, or not the table saws. We've got the band saws.
And
We've
sauce,
got
yeah.
everything. And so it's like if it's during deer season, if it's brown, it's down, and freezers are filled up. And when it comes to other things, he's got a ton of chickens. Oh my lord, he's got more. I've actually thought about, and I'm just going to say this to you because you and I are friends. Um, I had the guys on from the Fly Armory last week, and I'm thinking about getting some quail because
Yeah.
I don't need the quail to be all the fancy colors that they do. But I'm seriously thinking about getting some quail because he's moved up to has a hobby farm. So he
Yeah.
has between 18 and 22 head of cattle at any time. Big chicken coop. We get hogs in the fall and we butcher them late in the winter, and it's a nice life to have when you're living with me. We got fresh pork steaks, which you guys don't have in Arkansas, do you?
Oh yeah.
You guys have pork steaks down there?
Oh, absolutely. I love them barbecued.
Oh, smoked pork steaks, 1.5 inches thick on the
Abs-
grill. Big
Absolutely.
old jug of sweet tea.
Coleslaw and baked beans.
Oh, you put that coleslaw on top of it, man. I'm telling you what, right there, you got to make you a slaw burger out of that. But it's a great time. But so many people don't. understand it. And so when they go deer hunting, they're spending $17 for a tag, but they're spending $200 on processing, and they're
Yeah.
getting it cut with pork. And I'm like, dude, we got we, we've got the pigs, so we can do it ourselves. But so many people don't understand it, and it becomes almost impossible for somebody to live off the land if they don't know how to do that anymore.
Well, people don't know how to do it anymore. What happens when electricity goes out? People starve and freeze to death. They don't even know how to take care of themselves. And that's going to be really bad. I learned all that stuff when I was a Boy Scout, and it's coming real handy. We don't have Boy Scouts like we used to. They don't do things like we used to do. We used to go camping every Christmas time, regardless of the weather. If somebody showed up, we'd go camping, one person. And we've been camping when it's 5 degrees, snow on the ground. We put our eggs under our sleeping pads so they wouldn't freeze, so you cook them the next morning.
Yep.
People don't know how to do that kind of stuff anymore.
And
But those guys that raise the quail, what was it again?
Fly Armory.
Fly Armory. Those are good people, and
they're great.
They've got some good skins. I bought a couple of them from them in Branson when they were at the show. They were at the Salbug also.
That's where I met them at.
But they're good people. But quail, you have to have a license in Arkansas to grow them, and my grandfather did that, and so we always had quail for breakfast, biscuits and gravy, and you didn't hit a piece of buckshot every once in a while. I love quail hunting myself, but you can't find them anymore.
I'm going to tell you this. The Missouri Department of Conservation is really big about putting out quail boxes. So you can go and look up how to build a quail box. And then you hatch the quail and you put them in the quail box. And they're real big on what plants to put along fence rows to bring quail back. But my grandfather taught me that the last quail always comes out of the covey at 10 o'clock. And I've hit a lot of quail at 10 o'clock. I don't know if it was the last one coming out or not. I think it's just that when they spread, there's always going to be one flying at 10 o'clock, and that's when the buzz. But I'm going to tell you something. The quail are a great bird to eat, and I'm seriously thinking about, putting some up at the hobby farm. I actually have a coop up there. I have the frame of a coop that I just haven't finished. I'm thinking about putting some quail up there because it's 14 weeks from egg, from hatch to eat. It's 14 weeks.
I didn't know that.
Like, bang, we can have quail all the time because you're hatching a clutch of like 36.
You're not thinking about trying to grow your own hackle, are you?
Well, no, but I figure if I get one that's nice, I'll just borax that skin and be done with it. Yeah. We've got turkey up there. The chickens are mean to the turkeys, but I've got some roosters up there that I've just plucked the hell out of, and I'm not going to lie. I'd get in there to the chicken coop and I'll feel them and be like, all right, we're going to take this one, this one, this one, this one.
You're not the first person to do that.
And hens will eat the roosters' tails and their feathers because of the keratin. The hens will eat that. And so I just figure I'm just avoiding them getting slow, torturous death.
Yeah, there you go.
So
I think chickens have some disease where they'll pluck the feathers from each other. Anyway, I was just reading about that in Harry Darby's book, Catskill Fly Tire.
But dude, we are. Can you do me a solid?
Give you a what?
Do me a solid. Do me a favor, and we can come back and do this again.
Sure, we'll talk anytime.
Yeah, and maybe we can do another podcast again because I didn't even get to talk to you about the stuff I want to talk to you about.
Well, maybe what we need to do is get together and go to Tahlequah. And so we'll have all that time to do that. I don't know if I can do that, but we might.
Well, we'll figure it out. I've got to see if they'll give me, since I quit, I got to see if they'll give me my sick days, and we'll figure that out. But let's go ahead. I'm going to wrap this thing up, and then you stay on the line for just a minute, and we'll reschedule for another podcast because I know one of the guys I work with is a dedicated listener to the show, and he said, I love it when you just bullshit and talk about fishing. He goes, I love that to death, and I think that's what we've achieved tonight.
Sounds good to me.
All right, guys, and if you're listening to the podcast, be sure and move over to the YouTube channel and give us a like and a subscribe and leave us a comment. And wherever you're listening to the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. You can write whatever you want to underneath it, But always please support our sponsors. Cutthroat Leaders say 15% promo kayak, stoneflynets.com, and Tennessee Trailers, guys. Let these guys know you enjoy the show, because without them, it would not be possible. And we will be back I think next week we're going to have, I'm hoping we have Mike George next week. So that'll be kind of a fun one, but we're going to see what happens and get everything going. But we'll talk to you guys next week.